Welcome to Chasing Hard podcast. I am Lori, your host, where we talk about chasing hard after God and also chasing after hard things. Not that we chase after them, but they typically find us. But when they do find us, we get to choose what we're going to do, like which way we're going to go. And so that's what we're doing here today with my friend Nathan. I know Nathan in real life. So hi, Nathan.
Hello, Lori. How's it going?
It's good. Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
I
Thanks for having me.
I think I met you. Was it 2 years ago? Is that when?
Pretty close to it. Yeah, pretty close to
Okay.
2 years, year and a half, maybe.
So Nathan and I worked on the same team at our church. But first you were a resident, correct?
Correct.
For
I
two
was
years.
for 2 years. It's a 2 year residency program that I got to be a part of.
And what was your where did you focus in the residency program? I forget.
Yes, my emphasis was on connections ministry. So that
Okay.
was all things from first impressions, first steps, meeting new attendees to baptism and small groups, and a little heavier on the small group side in my case. So
Oh, well, good. So I'm gonna let you tell everyone a little bit about your story and God's call in your life.
absolutely. So let's see. My story begins. We'll start at Ozark Christian College in Joplin, Missouri. That's where my parents met. They both attended Ozark, and both came from families of pastors. They were both pastors' kids,
Wow,
and so
I
they
didn't know
met.
that.
Yes, yes, a family of pastors' kids,
Okay.
all the way down the line. And so they met, fell in love, did the Bible college ring by spring deal, and so they moved. I was actually born in Indiana, and then they moved when I was 2 to Southern California. So I grew up in Southern California. My dad was on staff at a church there, and I have two younger sisters who were born in the subsequent years. Grew up there, spent the first 13 years of my life there, and then we actually moved back to Joplin, Missouri. My parents accepted jobs at Ozark. My dad was actually a residence director at Ozark, so we lived on campus.
Oh, wow.
And all through my high school years, we lived attached to one of the college dorms, so that was an interesting experience.
Hmm.
Um, so throughout all that time, just grew up in a very strong Christian family.
Sure.
We were homeschooled for several years, and then we also had some back and forth with public school and private
Gotcha.
school. So
Let me ask you a question because I might forget
yes,
a little
absolutely.
later. So I know you went to Ozark, right?
Correct.
Did
Correct.
you were your parents still living on campus? Did you live there with them or did you live separately on campus?
I did live separately on campus.
Okay.
Yes, I had always said in California I wanted to go to Ozark. I didn't know how realistic that would have been until, by the Lord's working of the situation, we moved back, and so my parents did live on campus. I moved out of our apartment in the dorm and into the actual dorm. So I stayed in my
Okay.
parents' dorm, actually, funnily enough, but had a dorm room. So which was actually a little bit of an upgrade. My room was kind of a storage room in our apartment. It was kind of just like an extra storage
Oh,
room. So it
yeah.
was pretty small. It was big enough to fit a twin bed in my body. And so when I moved to a college dorm room, that's normally a downgrade for most
That's
people.
funny.
It was an upgrade for me. Yeah.
So the interesting thing about you is your life calling. I mean, there are plenty of interesting things about you. Don't get me wrong, but this blew me away when I
hmm
found this out.
hmm Yeah, so while I was at Ozark, I actually started as a missions major, intercultural studies major. I had gone on one international trip with CIY when I was in high school, and that kind of opened my eyes to um, not just ministry, which I already knew I wanted to do and had felt the Lord leading in, but really stirred a passion for the global church. And oh wow, this is happening all around the world and in different ways, but it's still the same family and the same church, same universal church. And so that really started me at Ozark on that path of studying what that looks like, global missions. And then coming into my last year at Ozark, I got connected with an organization called Mustard Seed Network, which is a church planting network based in Japan. And Mustard Seed particularly focuses on urban Japan. So they have several megacities with however many 100,000 people in the cities. And so I began exploring the opportunity of moving to Japan. And this was happening in 2019, leading into 2020. I was scheduled to go to Japan in May of 2020 on a survey trip for 10 days. And of
that
course,
didn't happen.
that did not happen. So it was a whirlwind of a time, as it was for everybody. In hindsight now, I can see that semester period was what landed me at Southeast for the residency for 2 years.
Oh.
And so I was kind of looking at residency or continuing my seminary education with a master's, or going to Japan. And so, in the way that the Lord worked it all out through COVID craziness, I ended up doing residency first, which really gave me 2 years of built-in time to study ministry through the 215 residency at Southeast, to continue biblical training, to be spiritually formed, just to get practical experience and practical growth that I needed as a 20, 21, 22-year-old. And it's been funny to see, since the residency has ended, I've started my master's on an online program and been able to go finally visit Japan and begin working towards moving there. So it's funny to see how the Lord has brought those things all around.
So you knew Japan before you ever visited Japan?
Yes.
How did you know Japan? Why Japan?
Yes. Before I even was really considering the possibility of Japan, I had multiple people at Ozark who were connected to Mustard Seed. They told me to my face, they said, "I think your personality would be really well suited for Japan." And I was like, "Why do you say that?" And they said, "Because you're such a big introvert." And I was like, okay. So it's like, they're very, very courteous, very polite, and just in terms of general surface level culture, it's very introverted and very kind of controlled. So that was one of the first things that some people had told me about why I should go to Japan. But I was able to connect with one of the lead pastors from Mustard Seed while he was visiting Ozark for a conference, and he shared with a missions class, and I got to talk with him personally about the need for the gospel in Japan. There's 126, 27 million people in the country, and less than 1% of them are believers. Less than 5% of that population has heard the name Jesus Christ. And I forget the exact number, but it's less than 10 or 15% are projected to ever be able to hear the name Jesus, unless something changes, unless the church is allowed to grow there. So really hearing those statistics is staggering in and of itself. And that is what piqued my interest to sign up for a survey trip. Now then, that survey trip was delayed for 2.5 years, so I kind of didn't know if that was still going to be where the Lord was leading, or if it had just been kind of a fluke, an interesting thing. So in October of 2022, I was finally able to go and really just meet so many of the church staff. I got to meet a lot of different pastors and families who have moved from the States to Japan to do ministry. Several, native believers who have either come to faith through Mustard Seed or have just found a church home in Mustard Seed. So got to connect with a lot of Christians there, to see the existing family of believers, but then also just was able to feel the weight of being literally surrounded by people who do not know Christ at all.
That's interesting and cool. So you said urban area. Where's the church that you're going? Near what?
Yes. So Mustard Seed currently has 7 churches that are meeting regularly, and they have a goal to have 12 churches total by 2025. I believe is still the goal. So let's see if I can list all 7. Tokyo, Hiroshima is the most recent one. Nagasaki, Kyoto. What do I say?
That's
Tokyo,
4. I think that's 4.
Sendai.
5.
I'll get made fun of for not being able to list the other 2. We have 7 of them. 7, and they're all mega cities. So you probably recognize several of those names. They're mega cities across Japan.
So you could be placed in any of those, or you get to choose, or how does that work?
I will be placed in one, and I'll hopefully find out pretty soon which city I will be in.
Cool.
The Mustard Seed normally has new church planters join an existing church So, I would go to Tokyo or
Yeah.
somewhere like that where they've been meeting regularly. So that way, during my first 18 months, I'm in pretty intensive language school while also doing
Yeah.
ministry and, doing the regular Sunday things and being
Yeah.
out in the surrounding neighborhoods trying to meet people and that kind of thing.
I'm
Uh,
trying to find a pen because I wanted to make a couple notes, that
yeah,
questions that I want
absolutely.
to ask you, but I can't find a pen. Sorry. So one thing is, I had a cousin. She's still my cousin actually, but years ago, she was a missionary in China. But you can't go there and be a missionary. You have to go there and
Yeah.
be a teacher or whatever. Is that the same? Is that the case in Japan?
No, Japan
Okay.
is more open to outside.
Okay.
I don't know. They wouldn't. It would be wrong to say they were open to evangelism because it's culturally kind of frowned upon and not seen as it's seen as foreign, not something that would be useful. But there aren't laws against it. Or, you're able to get a working visa and
Okay.
say, I'm going for a church. I'm working at a
Okay.
church, a Christian
Cool.
church. So
That's cool.
yeah, which is cool. Yeah.
So I know I can tell you have a passion for this. As a mother, I'm like, this is a hard call. Like maybe it's not a hard call for you, but it is because you're going to a culture that you don't know this culture personally, hands on. You visited once. They speak a different language. And you're, I don't know how many miles away from home, but you're away from home. Like you can't,
Yeah.
and all the people you love. Um, that sounds like a chasing hard thing. Answering a call, which is a hard call, but one that you feel good about. Like,
Yeah.
how does that feel? What does that feel like to you
Yeah.
being
Yes.
so far away from everything you know, everyone you know?
Yeah. It it is really tough. I experienced a little bit of it. I recently moved from Louisville back to Joplin. And so Louisville's been where a lot of my, community and close
Yeah.
friends have been for the last few years. So that was really, I think, first I remember for the 8-hour drive, just listening to, worship and praying and really trying to just process what was happening.
Yeah.
The first of the major goodbyes, I would have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And there was reassurance in that, that, I think Jesus kind of just spoke to me and said, this is, you're learning that you really are chasing hard after me before anything else. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, not to say that those friendships are bad things at all, because they're great things. We're called to
Right.
community. We need that. We're supposed to have that. But we also have eternity with
We do.
Christian family, and so those friends, whether or not I see them for the next
Right.
however long I'm in Japan, we will have eternity together. And
Mhm.
same for my family. I'm with my family now in Joplin,
Mhm.
but we know we'll have
We know.
eternity.
Yeah.
So that
Well,
makes it bittersweet,
it
but
is
it's
for
something
sure.
to look forward to. Yeah.
Are there plans even now being made to visit you, like family?
Oh,
Most
yes,
okay.
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. My youngest sister just got married. So both my younger sisters are married now. So my
Oh.
dad he said, once we finish paying off the wedding, we'll start saving up for tickets to
That's
Japan.
cool. So I know you and I've had this conversation before, but we'll have it here again.
Yeah.
As a mother, like this is I have 3 kids, they're all grown. My middle child, oldest son, went to IUS, which is 30 minutes away from where we
Yeah.
live, but it's in a different state. We live in Kentucky, that was in Indiana, but in-state tuition, so it was a good fit. He lived at home while he was putting himself through college, basically. And because he was in Indiana, his job was with he it was an accounting, I forget what it was, auditor. He audited accounts. And so he got a job with the state of Indiana to audit accounts, whatever, which meant he had to live in Indiana. Like it's
Oh,
30
yeah.
minutes away, but I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, my child lives, and maybe it was 40 with traffic. I don't
Right.
know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that was a big deal for me.
Yeah.
He finally moved, he did move back, whatever. My youngest son,
Mhm.
almost 2 years ago, moved to California. 20, I do know it's almost 2,300 miles from home.
Wow. Yeah.
That is a big deal to me. And so I should be talking to your mother, I guess. But like when he moved away, I remember thinking, so how do we keep Luke, his name, Luke, a part of our life? Like planning.
Mm.
And then I realized after trying, we have technology, like we can FaceTime
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah,
And we
absolutely.
would FaceTime him during Christmas or whatever we were doing, and we still do. But
Yeah.
it's like, you know what? Like it's life has changed. Life
Yeah.
is different. And so I can't make Luke a part of my life. I
Yeah.
have to find a different way to be a part
Yeah.
of his life. And he has to find a different way to be a part of our lives. And so as a mother, like I can, it's 5 hours of plane drive.
Yeah.
It's 23, it's what, 30 hours car drive because I've driven it before a few times. Japan, not so much.
Nope.
How's your mom? And a mom's hard. I know your dad has feelings too. So how's your
Yeah.
mom
Yeah. Yeah.
dealing with this?
Absolutely. Yes. I think she's doing as well as she can. We've talked
Okay,
about it a lot since I've
I'm
been back.
sure.
And actually that youngest sister who just got married also just moved to Las Vegas. She and her husband are
Mm,
at a church in Vegas now. So mom is getting all
yes,
of
she
the
is.
empty, kids moving away, empty nesters
Yeah.
at the same time. So
Yeah.
so does tough. But we've also talked a lot about this memory. It's a story she's told me. I don't remember it. I was
Mhm.
little, but when I was little, one or two, she tells me they had a world map up on my wall. And we had friends from college, from their time in college, who
Mhm.
were missionaries in different places. And so they said, the Caseys are missionaries in Italy, and so is missionaries in wherever else. And she says we would always end by saying, and Nathan's a missionary in California, where we were at the time. And so
Okay.
so she's told me that story to reassure me and herself also, if we're being honest, that this is the mission that
Right.
they've been wanting to raise me up in.
Yeah.
Not in a heartless, we're gonna send kind of way, but in a
Right.
be on mission for Christ. And they knew
Yes.
that going into our childhood, even that was, growing up and
Right.
moving was
Was part
inevitable
of
in
it.
some sense. So yeah.
That's the hard part, but it's also a very honoring part, like that they know that they're honoring God in that,
Yeah.
and they're honoring their children, and in turn you're honoring them in the way that they raised you,
Yes. Yeah.
just by doing what God has called you to do, which is really cool. And it does help to, because my son is on staff at a church in California, so that helps as well to know that this is a God thing. Nathan's not just being flaky and going to go live, across
Right.
the world for no good reason. So, my heart goes out to all of y'all, really. And
Yeah.
I remember, I guess your parents won't be taking you and moving you to Japan.
No.
We did move my son there, and like leaving him there was probably one of the hardest things I ever I've ever done. Even though I
Yeah.
liked the community, I liked the church. I kind of knew the pastor because he was from Southeast. Um, I knew it was good. I knew it was a God thing, but leaving him there was hard. So I don't know if it'd be better not like the airport scene, or
Right. Right.
because interestingly, when I leave from California visiting, I
Mhm.
usually cry.
Yep.
If I'm dropping him off at the airport here, I don't cry.
Yep.
So I think
Interesting.
it's the leaving him there
Yeah.
part still that gets
Yes.
me.
You have
So
a lot. You have a long journey ahead of you. You're just getting farther
yeah,
away the whole time. Yeah.
yes. So is there like a timeline for you? Do you go for a certain amount of years? Do you sign, or is it just open ended?
It is, from what I understand, it's open-ended with regular checkpoints, if that
Okay.
makes sense. So for me, especially the first phase, once I move there, is an 18 to 24-month phase where I'm at most likely in an existing church. I'm doing language school. I'm doing some of the cultural acquisition to get used to being in Japan. And then after that first 2 years or so, I will probably have about a month of furlough coming back to the States, and then
Oh wow.
join a new team to plant a church in a new city. So going towards the goal of reaching 12 cities by 2025, So that is the tentative plan. And then from the new team, there'll be checkpoints of, are you healthy? How's it going?
Right.
Is it still a good fit? That kind of thing. But from there,
Wow.
I mean, the culture is slow to receive and slow to take those roots of
Yeah.
Christianity in a lot of ways. And again, I'm speaking very broadly here. But because of that, you kind of know you're in it for the long haul. So
Okay.
yeah.
Wow. Well, that's exciting. I know you spent a lot of the last year, maybe more or less, I don't know, raising funds.
Yeah.
How's that going?
It's going pretty well. I have the two major goals are a one-time upfront chunk
Okay.
of change and then a monthly recurring need, which is probably the more important one. But I have raised about 80% of that at this point, which is
Wow.
awesome.
That
Praise God
is.
for how he's provided in a ton of different ways. And my goal is to move to Japan in January.
Okay.
So that is dependent on me finishing fundraising 100% by January, by December, really. So that's the goal we're working
Okay.
towards. And
Wow.
yeah.
So I'm going to put your link and stuff afterwards. You
Yeah,
can send me your information so people
yeah,
can donate.
absolutely.
That's so cool. So is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you feel like is part of this story?
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit already, so it wouldn't be new, but I've just been thinking about I'm gonna blank on the passage now, the reference, but I was just reading in, I think it's Luke's gospel, where Jesus is his family is looking for him, and they're kind of not sure of what's going on. They're kind of doubtful about him, and he says, you know, who are my mother and brothers, the ones who are about the things of God, basically. This is a rough
Right.
paraphrase.
I gotcha. I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yes, yeah, and I've been thinking about that passage a lot because I think the yeah, just the microcosm of moving away from Louisville and realizing, oh, I'm chasing hard after the
Mhm.
things of God and what I know He's called me to. One of the biggest parts of that for me was leaving people behind,
Mhm.
good people who are also about the things of the Lord, but for this season, those things have us in different places.
Yeah.
I think that's probably been the biggest
Right.
cost to count at this point.
Yeah.
Um, on this side of
I'm
not being in
missing.
Japan yet. Yeah.
So you mentioned a few times about eternity, like you'll see those people again, and I think that is probably the main thing to remember when you're chasing hard things, or when hard forget about chasing. When hard things come your way and you got
Yeah.
to do something with them, this
Yep.
is not our forever home.
Yep.
Like this life is very temporary, and the older you get, the faster time seems to go anyway. And so to keep the end in mind, which is not here, it's eternal. And to keep the eternal things in mind helps us do the hard thing, do whatever that looks like in each individual's life, because, not everybody's going to go live in a different country and culture. But I think we
Yeah.
can all relate to having hard things that we have to deal with. And to me, the only way to do that is keeping the end in mind, living your life fully here. You have to be present
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
but knowing that there's an end to this, like there's a shelf
Yes.
life. This is not forever. And so you've mentioned that a few times in relationships. So I
Yeah.
see that you have a heart like that.
And when you keep that eternal perspective and that
Mm.
hope in mind, it's not escapist. It's not
Right. Oh,
saying,
no, at
oh,
all.
this world doesn't matter. We
No.
have something better. It's because we know we have eternal life in Jesus. Our eternal life is now. It doesn't start on some far off day, but we live
No.
now
Yeah, exactly.
differently because we're living how we're going to live forever.
Yes.
And that is so different than any worldly wisdom.
For
um,
real.
but it is so much better at the same time. So,
Yeah, that's for real.
yeah.
Well, Nathan, our time is almost up. So I thank you so much for taking time out to
Thank
have
you.
this conversation with
Yeah,
us. I feel like I know you a little better, and I will definitely be praying for you. And
I
I hope a
appreciate it.
lot of listeners feel the tug on their hearts to support you in finances and prayer as well.
Absolutely. I'll send you my info so
Okay.
anyone can connect who wants to
Yep.
connect with the mission.
That sounds good. Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks, Lori.